Think about the last time you had a bad video call. Maybe the video pixelated and froze. Maybe the audio became robotic. That distinctive warbling, stuttering sound that makes the other person seem like they're speaking through a broken radio. Maybe there was a delay. Try to speak again, talk over each other, apologize. Maybe it just dropped entirely. Now think about downloading a file on the same bad connection. It slows down. It might pause briefly, but when it finishes, the file is complete and correct. The bad connection didn't corrupt it. It just took longer. Why does a bad connection destroy a video call while a download merely slows it down? The download and the call are both just data moving across the same network. What makes them respond so differently to the same degraded conditions? The answer is time, specifically a property called latency, and its unpredictable cousin, jitter. And understanding them reveals something deep about why real-time communication is one of the hardest problems in networking. Latency is the time it takes for data to travel from one point to another. Send a packet, measure how long until it arrives. That duration is latency. It's sometimes called delay, and on the internet, it's always greater than zero. Physics alone guarantees this. Signals can't travel faster than light, and even at light speed, crossing a continent takes tens of milliseconds. Add the processing time at each router, the queuing time at congested links, the time spent traveling through cables that are rarely a straight line between 2 points, and typical internet latency ranges from 10 milliseconds for connections within the same city to 200 or more for connections spanning continents. For most data transfers, latency is almost irrelevant. If you're downloading a large file, and each packet takes 50 milliseconds to travel from server to client, the download takes marginally longer than it would at 1 millisecond. The file still arrives. The content is still correct. You might not even notice. But for real-time communication, latency is the difference between a usable experience and an unusable one. Consider a phone call. When you speak, your voice is captured, digitized, packaged into packets, sent across the network, received, decoded, and played back on the other end. If that entire process takes 20 milliseconds, the conversation feels natural, the delay is imperceptible. If it takes 150 milliseconds, you might notice a slight lag, but can adapt. If it takes 300 milliseconds, less than a third of a second, the conversation becomes genuinely difficult. You finish speaking, wait, hear the response, try to reply, talk over each other. The rhythm that makes conversation natural is broken. At 500 milliseconds of latency, a voice call is nearly unusable. Not because anything technical has failed, because human conversation depends on timing, on turn-taking, on the almost instantaneous feedback between speaker and listener. Take that timing away, and communication degrades catastrophically. This is why video call quality collapses on bad connections when file downloads merely slow. The file doesn't care when it arrives. The call cares intensely. But latency alone isn't the whole story. A connection with consistently high latency is manageable, annoying, but manageable. You adapt. You learn to pause longer before expecting a response. The brain recalibrates. What's truly destructive for real-time communication is not high latency, but variable latency. Latency that changes from moment to moment in unpredictable ways. This variability has a specific name: jitter. Jitter is what happens when packets traveling across the same connection take different amounts of time to arrive. One packet takes 40 milliseconds, the next takes 80, the next takes 35. There's no consistent rhythm. Each packet arrives on its own unpredictable schedule, varying around some average. For a file download, jitter is completely invisible. TCP buffers incoming data and reorders it as needed. Whether packets arrive smoothly or in bursts, the application gets a continuous, correctly ordered stream. Jitter is absorbed entirely in the transport layer. For real-time audio and video, jitter is catastrophic. Here's why. A video call transmits frames at a fixed rate, typically 30 frames per second. That means one frame every 33 milliseconds. At the receiving end, those frames need to be played back at the same fixed rate, 30 frames per second, one every 33 milliseconds, to produce smooth, natural motion. If frames arrive with variable timing, sometimes 20 milliseconds apart, sometimes 60 milliseconds apart, but you have to play them back at a constant rate. You have a problem. The frame that arrived early has to wait. The frame that arrived late causes a gap. If the late frame misses its playback window entirely, the video freezes for a moment while the application waits for something to display. This freezing, this stuttering, this robotic audio, it's not caused by the data being wrong. The data is fine. It's caused by the data arriving at the wrong time. Real-time applications have developed a standard defense against jitter, the jitter buffer. A jitter buffer is a small delay deliberately introduced at the receiving end. Instead of playing audio or video, the instant it arrives, the application holds it briefly, perhaps 50 or 100 milliseconds, building up a small reserve. Then it plays from that reserve at a steady, consistent rate. Packets that arrive slightly late can still make it into the buffer before their playback moment. Packets that arrive slightly early wait in the buffer rather than being played back too soon. The jitter buffer converts variable, unpredictable arrival timing into a smooth, consistent playback stream. It's an elegant solution to the jitter problem, but it has a direct cost: latency. Every millisecond of buffer is a millisecond added to the end-to-end delay. A 100 millisecond jitter buffer means that even if network latency is only 20 milliseconds, the end-to-end delay perceived by the user is at least 120 milliseconds, because the application is deliberately waiting before it plays anything. This creates a painful trade-off. More buffer means smoother playback under jittery conditions, but more buffer also means more delay, which degrades the conversational feel of the call. Less buffer means lower delay, but more vulnerability to jitter. Packets that arrive outside the buffer window get discarded, producing gaps. Modern video call applications manage this trade-off dynamically, measuring jitter continuously and adjusting buffer size in response. When the network is stable and jitter is low, the buffer shrinks to minimize delay. When jitter increases, the buffer grows to absorb it. The user experiences this as quality that adapts, not always gracefully, but better than a fixed buffer would manage. Now here's where the comparison to file downloads becomes even clearer. When a TCP connection, the kind used for file downloads, detects that a packet was lost, it retransmits. The receiver waits, the missing data arrives, and delivery continues. It might take an extra 50 or 100 milliseconds, but eventually the complete data stream is delivered. The wait is worth it because the file needs to be complete. Real-time audio and video cannot wait. A voice sample that needs to be played back 20 milliseconds from now cannot wait 100 milliseconds for a retransmission to arrive. By the time the retransmitted packet arrives, its moment has passed. Playing it then would introduce a jump in the audio, a gap in the video, worse than simply skipping it. This is why real-time applications almost universally use UDP rather than TCP, as we established earlier. UDP doesn't retransmit. When a packet is lost, it's gone. The application moves on to the next one. A lost audio packet produces a brief click or silence. A lost video packet produces a corrupted frame or a moment of pixelation. Both are small imperfections. Neither stalls the entire stream while waiting for retransmission. The application accepts imperfection in exchange for continuity. A slightly degraded call that keeps going is far better than a perfect call that keeps freezing. But this means real-time applications have to develop their own strategies for handling loss because they're not using TCP's recovery mechanisms. Modern video call protocols use techniques like forward error correction, sending redundant data alongside the real data so that the receiver can reconstruct a lost packet from the redundant information without needing a retransmission. They use interpolation, generating an approximation of missing audio from the surrounding samples so that a brief gap sounds like a slight glitch rather than a jarring silence. They reduce resolution and frame rate dynamically under poor conditions, choosing a degraded but continuous experience over a high-quality but broken one. All of these techniques, jitter buffers, forward error correction, adaptive quality, UDP instead of TCP, are responses to the same underlying reality. Real-time communication is uniquely sensitive to time, in a way that no other category of network application is. A file has no deadline. It can wait for retransmissions. It can absorb jitter invisibly. It can take as long as it needs. A conversation has constant, relentless deadlines, one every 33 milliseconds for video, hundreds of times per second for audio. Miss those deadlines, and the experience degrades. Miss enough of them, and the call becomes unusable. This is why your video call falls apart when your connection gets worse, while your download just slows down. The download is patient, the call is not. The download can use every tool TCP provides to ensure complete, correct delivery. The call has to accept imperfection and keep moving, because the only thing worse than an imperfect call is one that freezes while waiting to be perfect. Latency and jitter are not just technical parameters. They are the properties that determine whether real-time human communication is possible across a network, and understanding them explains more about everyday internet experience than almost any other concept in networking.